Just listening to Jim, I think if you take anything away from here, his comment about cybersecurity, this industry is comfortable with products and projects, and we're not comfortable with process. That should be your big takeaway. At the ownership level, it's really about establishing the policies that that organization is going to want to use to design their products. And then at the contractor level, it's absolutely about how you install and support the systems that you put in. Just out of curiosity, how many in the room are part of a systems integration or contractor business? Yeah, okay. So to get things started here, we're going to talk first about the NIST function called identify. And in simple terms, you got to know what you have, meaning in order to secure something, you have to know you have it. One of the fundamental challenges that this industry has is knowing in a given building what's in it. What systems are in it? So what you're going to hear from me today are these following things. You got to know the systems, meaning building automation, lighting control, etc. You have to understand the impact on organization. It's all about policy and procedure. That all is related to this topic of process. When something goes bad, what does it mean? So if I'm in a hospital, and I've got an operating suite, and the controls go out in the middle of surgery, clearly that's a bad situation to occur. And you've got to understand that the risk, and everything's relative to the kind of situation you're in. And lastly, cyber is not a one-time thing. You don't just assess, find, cure your vulnerabilities and move on. It's a continuous problem. Every day the challenges continue to increase and change in terms of variety. So there are these topics, if you will, within the function that help you organize your thinking and organize your planning. The first is asset management. I've already referred to a little bit about this in terms of what are the systems. So, typically we have building automation, you have lighting control, you'll have elevators in any kind of a office type situation, access control, video surveillance, and many other possibilities. Large buildings in New York City that recently went up in Hudson Yards has over 20 different smart systems in it. So, and why is this important? Because when you try to manage cyber, you can't look at it, well, I took care of my building automation system, I'm all set. Now, you have to look across all the different systems if you're going to really have the confidence that you've addressed the problem. So, it starts with knowing I have a system. Now, the next step is what is that system, what do I have to know about that system in order to manage it from a cyber perspective? Obviously, I have to know who the supplier is, what the model of the system is, and key attributes. Well, I have to know who installed it. Absolutely have to know that. It's critical. And what kind of a network is it connected to? Is it standalone? Is it integrated into the corporate network? Do I have remote accessibility? And then from a software perspective, in particular, I need to know what revision it is, because manufacturers are continuously providing upgrades and security patches, and if I'm not keeping track of that stuff, then I'm behind. And this is just a short list of the many things that you really do need to look at when you start to get into the cyber game. Business environment, again, how dependent is the company on the operation of each and every system? And do I understand when something goes wrong, what the impact is going to be? How am I going to respond? Do I have backups in place? Who takes the phone call? Do I call the local contractor who put the system in? Is it how do I communicate out to the tenants in the building that something has gone wrong? And this, particularly around the supply chain in our industry, this is the big deal, because in enterprise IT, the suppliers are mainly the folks who provide the servers and the PCs and the network itself. In our world, a huge role in keeping buildings up and running. Governance, it might as well just be really about this process concept. It starts with policies. in the world of security and cybersecurity, you have to have policies. You've got to make decisions about how you want to run things. And it has to be communicated throughout. Again, Jim referred to this a little bit in terms of who owns the problem. Well, it's absolutely a team responsibility overall, but this industry needs to define where the problem is going to live from an accountability standpoint. And that hasn't been clearly defined yet, for sure. It could be in the IT department, it could be in facilities, but the answer is still evolving. Regulatory and legal issues are definitely starting to enter our industry. Historically, there hasn't been standards around cyber for most buildings and building types, but that's changing. The military has specs now. Certainly, you've got HIPAA requirements within the medical industry. California just passed a critical law here in January regarding personal information, and if you're not familiar with it, you need to look it up. So our industry is going to be affected, and so the result of this is going to be showing up in specifications. It's going to be, and you're going to be held accountable as a business to know what these things are. And of course, you want your policies to align well with the risks. The interesting thing about cyber, really, that isn't necessarily obvious. We like to think there's a silver bullet in terms of technology that would just make this problem go away. I can, protect the network and I'm done, or I can harden my controllers and I'm done. It's a people problem fundamentally. The reason there are breaches continuously is because we don't take this part of it seriously enough. This is a statistic of one of many that we've looked up. It says somewhere between 60 and 90% of all breaches are because of people not being properly trained, understanding the policies and processes that are in place and following them. It's that fundamental and it's that important. Risk assessment. So as a process, the first thing is to understand how bad the situation is and the vulnerabilities. Because I know the building automation system, great. Now, where are my risks within that system? Do I have, for example, out-of-date software? Physically, where is it located? If the server is in an unsecured room, Kevin was telling me about a system recently where somebody literally walked into the building, walked into the room where the server was, disconnected, and walked out the building with it. It happened, within this year or last year?
Yeah, I found out about it this year. Someone said, "Hey, what happens when someone takes your supervisor?" And I said, "What do you mean takes?" And I'm like, "Yeah, somebody walked in and stole it." So a lot of us don't even plan for that, but it's obvious that sometimes you should.
So the configuration of the users. Why is this important? So most systems have ways in which you can control how users gain access. There's a setting having to do called auto lockout. Why is that important? So auto lockout basically says after 3 or 4 attempts, I'm not going to let you try again. So a hacker coming into a control system, once they get to the controller, they start using a software called a password cracker to guess at the password. Well, if you have the auto lockout set at, say, 3 or 4 attempts, the likelihood that they're going to be able to get in now is almost next to nothing. So there's a lot of ways you can help yourself by doing some basics and making sure you do. Non-application software running on a server. So a lot of times the building automation system has a browser on it and people going out on Facebook and surfing the web and inadvertently bringing malware onto that server. A BAS server should be used for one thing and one thing only, and that's to run the HVAC system. Don't use it for anything else. So you need to then identify your internal and external threats. Where are your problems coming from? Malware is probably the number one. The reason ransomware is hitting servers today is not because the hackers are necessarily getting into the building. Malware is ubiquitous. So again, if that server is being used for other things, the malware getting there and it's getting in. The hackers, of course, and then employees themselves. When the disgruntled employee leaves, their package be removed the same day, right? How many times has that not happened? Okay, so it's a problem. And again, you got to understand the impacts. Yes, sir.
I want to stay on that one for a minute. There was a major series of years in another country which were logging in and reconfiguring substations, but they only people who could die logged in. So it was part of a labor action. The overcaps and
Wow. Yeah. So we like to sometimes think this isn't happening. It absolutely is happening. You just got to wake up to the reality of it. So downtime, access control system. So you've assessed it. You know how big the problem is. You go in. So this is where you tend to bring in, you know, one of my colleagues here is going to talk about protect. So once you have gotten yourself to a good and make sure things are continuing to be healthy. Audits, there's a certain manual aspect to this because it's a process. So we're going to have to get used to the idea that systems life cycle management. As we all know, we have a 15-year, more or less, horizon. Within 15 years, the systems that are going in go out of date. Once they go out of date and they're no longer supported, you can't upgrade them anymore, so the protections aren't available. What do? Well, you've got to have answers for that. So how many of us are aware and keep track of the manufacturers when they release a new software to make sure we get the latest patches? And then ultimately, you've got to have coordination between IT and OT. So let me give you an example here. I know of a major organization up in New York where the IT department did something that they think is perfectly fine, which is they went out and scanned the network to see if there were any ports that were problematic. This building had over 10,000 OT devices in it, building control devices. They knocked off 60% of them with scanning software because our systems aren't designed to be pummeled with network requests. They're just not. But the IT world doesn't understand that yet. So coordinating between our world and the IT world is essential going forward because they need to also understand our limitations as likewise we need to understand the way they approach things.
Can you wrap up, Steve?
Yeah. And last but not least, supply chain management. The processes are going to be defined and sent down through the supply chain. As suppliers, both at the manufacturer level and the contractor level, you're going to see requirements coming in just to bid on projects in the future. And you're going to see where you're going to be audited to maintain that compliance. Final comment, our industry is very different than enterprise IT. We really rely on all of us here in this room as suppliers, and it's a much greater challenge than the IT industry is used to dealing with. So we got to keep that in mind as we go forward. I know I used up my time more than I did, but I couldn't help it.
Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks, Steve.